How much progress do you think a perfectionist overthinker will make in art within 2 years? Well, a lot. First and foremost, I've always excelled in art, but only recently took it seriously. This is me relearning art and growing to higher heights. September 14, 2022. I made my first ever digital painting. I was honestly really proud of it. My idea was to make a pink dryad. Here's one without the headpiece, and as you can see, the hair sucks. You can tell how much knowledge I'm lacking since I only copied and combined references without actually knowing how to draw these elements. This painting took 3 weeks. Yes, you heard that right. 3 weeks. I was aiming for perfection, despite it being my first ever digital art piece. Regardless, I think this first ever artwork is the first stepping stone in my growth as an artist. I wanted to draw full-body characters, and so I practiced anatomy. Stiff, inefficient, and inaccurate. I mean, what'd you expect? Here, I studied the face a bit more, just sketching mindlessly and not learning much. Here, I tried the iconic Loomis method. I study, not bad, but I liked it. I tried to follow a reference. Honestly, not bad. Doesn't look like the reference, but it still looks pretty decent. And so I made another one. Yeah, I hated this one. The line art is too intense. The color is fine, but I think the texture ruins it, and so I tried it again. And I liked it. I could honestly see this as an art style in its own, with a lot more finesse of course. I tried an art study of Lotus Bubble. It's decent. I missed a lot of subtlety because I just didn't know any better. I believe I color picked the colors, and that's why it looks identical. Proportions bad, hair bad, effort good. More anatomy studies, but with more structure. As you can see, there's more guidelines and skeletal knowledge. Still very stiff and lacking in confidence. More anatomy sketches. And then I started doing gesture drawing. Gesture drawing helps with fluidity, which is what I desperately needed. Man anatomy. Starting to have some definition, but still not quite there yet. Yeah, just no. I tried to make a swordswoman, but failed. Face study. I tried a textured airbrush. Actually, I'm pretty proud of the top one. I kept using different brushes because I wanted to find a brush that would feel good to use. At this point, I got burnt out of anatomy, and so I tried a different study. Background study. I hate background studies. They're so tedious and so complicated. That's why I wanted to be good at them. More general background studies that don't really have a direction to it. This one I tried to paint with a sketch brush. Not bad honestly, it gave texture. I was trying to practice my color picking without actually using the color picking tool. Here I tried a smooth brush. It turned out fine, but it was definitely too smooth. A lot of artists will tell you that there should be soft and sharp lines to give the painting life. This does not have life. Here I tried a mix of texture and smoothness. I also tried to make it more painterly. Here I changed my brush tip for the first time. I came back to face studies. This was supposed to be a hair study, but I genuinely didn't learn anything because I was just mindlessly copying a reference without actually understanding why and how it works. This one, I was still mindlessly copying a reference without actually learning anything. Creepy and bad. At this point, I was deeply burnt out because I was making nothing but bad art. So I quit. I stopped drawing altogether for an entire 2 months. But then, I found out who Marc Brunet was, and I was sold. His art style was both anatomically accurate and charming, which were both what I wanted my art style to look. My admiration for his teachings was so great that I bought his art school. His art school basically taught me everything and revived my love for art. I can't really show you all my studies since most of them are very nude, but just imagine lots of anatomy studies. Female anatomy study, male anatomy study, nude, anatomy without reference, first ever fan art of Chun-Li and Morrigan. I made another file for daily gesture drawing. Here are just a few of the days, and you could clearly see the improvements. It's good to try different ways of how to draw something. Do whatever feels natural for you, regardless of meta or solid techniques. Of course, try metas and established techniques, but also if you don't like doing it that way, then don't force yourself to make it work. The rest of the days shown are just random sketches from imagination and copying other artists' form. I eventually got bored of gesture drawings since it was becoming more of a chore rather than something that I enjoyed. I went back to portraits. I believe this one was from imagination. I did a skull study to prepare for a portrait. Honestly pretty good. Proportions are still a bit off, but still decent. Considering that I haven't studied color at this point, the colors were pretty good, and so I made another one. Massive improvement from the first one. The hair is overly rendered, and usually that's not recommended. But in this case, I feel like it works. I did another one. I tried more of an artistic direction, exaggerating colors and actually clumping up the hairs this time. Lighting is absolute garbage since I haven't even touched any kind of light studies. Another. I went even more artistic on this one by putting weird colors on the hair. I also copied the background of the reference. Another. With this one, I tried a chalk brush. While it looks good overall, it was just not what I was going for. This could honestly be an art style that someone could have. Here is when I absolutely popped off. I was using different colors, different layer styles, and brushes. The hair kinda sucks, but honestly, the face overshadows how bad the hair is. It has a very delicate look to it, probably one of my best works. I watched an Ahmed Al-Dori video on skin, and I loved it. I don't think I did it completely right though, but I really had fun with it. The next few drawings are anatomy heavy. I really wanted to focus on my anatomy and worry about everything else later on. I did a 20-minute pose with color, and this is the outcome. First, I did the silhouette so that I would have an easier time doing their outlines. As you can see, the first ones are very bad. I did 2 a day. In total, I did 33 poses with color. I did a fan art of Chun-Li right after I finished those studies. It's okay, nothing too mind-blowing. I did use a lot of effects such as chromatic aberration. I really like those magazine types of covers where there's cool text, but I didn't know how to do that. I did more in-depth female anatomy studies. I knew I was pretty weak at legs, and so I did more studies of it from different angles. I did torso studies. Most of them are pretty nude. Not only will you know how to draw a certain body part in any position, you'll also start experimenting with art style once you know the rules. Forearm studies, breast studies, back anatomy, arm anatomy, eye anatomy. I tried expressions but just ended up looking like they didn't have any expression. I did an artist study on their anatomy, specifically TV Choi's guide on ArtStation. Feet anatomy, aka the most boring part to draw unless you like feet. I hate feet. It's probably the weakest in my anatomy knowledge since I didn't do much of it. My first attempt at hand anatomy. Not bad, but it does look a bit dirty. I did an Ethan Becker hand triangle. Basically, you use a triangle as a base to draw the direction of the hand. I liked it, but ended up just doing it my own way, which is brute force. Afterwards, I did another fan art, this time of Mirko. I put the anatomy study into good use. Similar to last time, I was going for a magazine type of vibe. Nothing much to say here, just that there's a significant improvement in anatomy and in color. More pose study, a clear improvement from this. I did more action poses, body shading. Although a bit much, I think I got the idea of it. More full body anatomy studies. As you can see, lines have gotten more straight and fluid, unlike the chicken scratches in the past. A creative work after an intensive anatomy study. It's okay, it's not really that interesting, but still pretty decent. I went into fantasy clothing study. It was nice, but ultimately, it felt off to me since I haven't really studied how to draw clothing and drapery. Here's another one where I tried different layer styles. Looks nice, honestly. I make Jesus. Even more, all these fantasy studies are copied from reference in Pinterest. More fan art, again, similar to the previous work, I was going for a magazine look. Something that you might notice is that my anatomy and form are stiffer. That happened because I stopped gesture drawing altogether. That's when I realized the value of gesture drawing. As you can see, I'm rusty. I did drawings with reference just to practice my line confidence. With this file, I was more random with my studies, but the main topic was gesture. You'll see more folds, skin, line art, and color studies on this one. I did more drawings from imagination, but mostly nude studies and reference studies. I tried boxes with gestures, more curved gestures, and more mixed gestures. Let's take a break from gesture drawings and go to personal projects. I felt confident enough to tackle a project like creating a character with story. Here's a wind wizard. My idea was that he's a pretentious magic user because he's very talented and strong. His expression looks like he's bored and his pose isn't really all that open. This one is an elf archer, of course. I think every artist has drawn an elf archer once in their journey. It's so generic but so attractive to draw. My idea here was that she's an elf that eats meat. Usually, elves are depicted as vegetarians or outright vegans. But in this case, I wanted her to be the opposite of that. In her world, food is scarce, and to fill the tribe's stomachs, they had to resort to eating animals. A thing you should keep in mind when making characters is story. Here's another concept. My idea was her tribe practices mid to long distance combat by using metal infused by their own blood could throw them like it was their own hands. Since they focus on mid to long range combat, her attire doesn't really have heavy armors or any. They only have a rope to hide their movements. It's also an excuse to draw a hot lady. Here's another fan art of Starfire. This one is more so a normal character. I don't really give my characters names just because I don't necessarily get attached to them. This one is okay. I honestly think that this was a bad day for me. I didn't even bother to draw the hands. I feel like this one is below my skill level at that time. It happens though. It's normal. Some days you feel like you can't draw any pose. You feel like you forgot everything you learned. More general studies. Drawing characters from pure imagination. No reference was used on this one. Given that I didn't use any reference, I feel like they're pretty soulless. This was when I felt confident enough to tackle a big project. Following a Marc Brunet art tutorial on YouTube, I made a character out of a shell. This one is a worm snail shell. I made the shell into a weapon since the shell has a cone shape. I tried different variations of clothing. ranging from cloth and aquatic debris to metal. I chose a hybrid, mixing jellyfish texture as a cloth and metal for the armor. Looking back, my cloth and armor shading is definitely lacking. I also feel like I've over-rendered some parts. Overall, this was probably one of my best works at that time. I did something different. I did a background study of a mountain. It's decent, nothing too rendered. What I wanted to study was the forms of the mountain and how lighting affects it. I did hair studies. I experimented with different color lighting on the hair, and that's why it has a slight tint to it. As you can probably tell by now, I jump from topic to topic. It really depends on my mood and what I want to study at that time. I did more in-depth lighting study using sculptures. I learned that soft and hard shadows are essential for your lighting to look good. I made another character. I wanted to try cell shading just because it has a simpler process. I like it honestly, but when I finished it, I couldn't help but compare it to Jut from Valorant.
Get out of my way!
Keep in mind, I don't play Valorant, but it's kinda crazy how similar they are. I applied that knowledge to portraits and I improved immensely. I like this one in particular since it looked the best in my opinion. What I found out is that your sketch doesn't necessarily need to be as good if your color and lighting are good. This was when everything started to click. Everything seemed to just make sense. I was experiencing my first big growth spurt. I did more studies on how to color the body and it looks amazing. Everything was just flowing and it just felt right. The color, the lighting, the pose, all of it just felt natural. Granted, there's still a lot that's lacking in my anatomy, such as hands, feet, clothing, and hair. But I felt so good and so confident to have been able to make these. I did subtle lighting and extreme lighting studies. This one is clothing studies, folds, and how shadow and light interact with it. I made this one with the goal in mind to focus on hair. As you can see, it's more artistic than it is hair. This character is also the Jet lookalike, if you remember. I changed the design a bit just so I could avoid people from thinking that I copied the design. My idea was that her hair are like water blades. This one I drew wet skin. In the reference, she looked like she just got out of the pool and that's why she looks shiny. This was the first time I tried stylization and it looks beautiful. I think you can probably tell by now that I'm not even trying to draw the hands. And so I did more studies to prepare for the next one. I did sketches and gestures just to warm up and then I did an intensive study of the hand. It just looks masterful. I used a lot of tan, orange, red, blue, and green tint to really sell the realism. I applied that knowledge to the full body and it looks so realistic. I actually drew the hand this time. Feet are still missing, but overall, a good study. It honestly looks like a realistic reference from far away. It's crazy. I did an eye study since I felt like my eyes could use a little bit more rendering in future art. I love this one since it still holds up to my standards now. I was getting really good at copying references. That's why it looks almost identical. Returning back to gesture drawing, I tried different colors. As you can see, my anatomy has gotten better. Most of these are just basic 1 minute per pose and some sketches. As a celebration for my progress, I redrew my first ever digital art. I could have done more by drawing more foliage, drawing her face marks, and put more silvers and greens. But this is the final product for now. It's less saucier, but still a clear improvement. I drew the anatomy, good colors, decent values, and a clear focus. The thing that I'm most proud of is that I drew this within the day. My first digital art took 3 weeks. 1 year and 9 months of effort and determination. This is my progress. Now granted, I could have done more practice. I will admit that I skipped a few days just because I was lazy. And there were days where I would just do a 10-minute gesture drawing and call it a day. I could have done more, but the constant doubt and failure that I've experienced throughout my journey really burnt me out a lot of the times. What I failed to realize is that the same mistakes that I was so disgusted to see were the ones that really made me great. And I've realized that now. You shouldn't shun failures out. You should understand and embrace it. Only then will you realize that failure is what's going to make you great. At this point, I felt confident enough to develop my art style. As you can see, I've taken more of an artistic approach in the faces, less detail and realism, and more anime-esque. Since Marc Brunet is the artist that really inspired me, there's a lot of elements in his art style in my art. You can especially see that in a lot of my past artworks. I wanted to deviate from that and really just make my own art style. Before that though, you might notice something about these. No feet. There. All fixed. I pushed certain features such as eyes, nose, and facial definition to give it more of a simpler look. While I like this study in general, I felt like it looked too Disney, which I didn't particularly like, and so I did a specific study on anime faces. These are purely from references. I mainly wanted to capture the big eyes, soft face, and flowy hair. Here I applied what I learned. I picked a realistic reference and made it into anime. I did more references and pure anime references. This one is closer to the art style I was aiming for. I made the nose and mouth a bit too small to the point where it just looks weird. Now I popped off on this one. This one is probably the closest I got to the art style I wanted. Her head does look a bit small though. Mouth and teeth study. I copied the works of Tako. Something that I really admire is anime style with realistic teeth. I wanted to be really good with mouths, and so I did a specific study to incorporate it in later artworks. My favorite's the one with the tongue. Who would have guessed? Some general fold studies. I struggle a lot with folds, and that's something that I still lack to this day. Leather, wool, and denim are just a few of the textures I really wanted to understand, mainly because it's the most common ones. You can probably draw any kind of clothing you like if you just understand these textures. Some composition studies, I used grayscale so that I could understand the reference better. Usually, darker means it's closer, and lighter means it's further back. It's probably at this point where I got my second click. Everything just seemed to flow even more. While I won't show you all my artworks just because of personal reasons, I will however show you some of it. I made a couple more characters before this, but I'm only going to show you 2 of them. The reason being is that I'll make a specific video for that. Anyways, an amazing piece. Essentially, I combined all the things I've learned. Lighting, anatomy, color theory, line art, etc. And I tried to draw something I've never drawn before. Mech. I just love how complicated mech is. As you can see, it's amateurly done, but honestly, for my first time tackling mech, not even having a study on it, it's pretty good. Something you might have noticed is that it's still not done. There's a lot of reason for that. One being my next video, and 2 is that I got lazy. Simple color harmony and relatively simple lighting. Overall, a good piece. Now, this one is my best work so far. It is the style I was truly aiming for. Just like the previous piece, I made some more characters in between these. You can tell by looking at the top, they're basically connected. I make all my characters in one file just so that I don't make 1,000 files with thousands of characters that I don't even finish. Anyways, the piece has even better lighting, anatomy, line art, and color harmony. Regardless of how basic the character is, it still looks amazing. It's the best thing I've made so far in my journey. Studies pay off, what can I say? I'm just going to show you the last of my gestures and finish it off with a live drawing of my current skill. Live session time. I hope this becomes proof that you can make it. Especially in this day and age where AI has become more prominent, it's easier to just give up, is what you would think if you have a weak mindset. It shouldn't be that way. It doesn't matter whether or not this AI is better than my art, because at the end of the day, AI is just an amalgamation of all the best artists' best qualities. The moment you get swayed by AI is the moment you lose. Growth should be celebrated, regardless of who it is and how long it took them. Being envious that the person is growing faster than me is a feeling that every artist, at the very least, has felt during the journey. Whether or not you succumb to the envy really depends on you. PewDiePie is a great example. People are envious since he's grown so much in such a short amount of time. What people are failing to realize is that PewDiePie has shown what is possible if you put the time and effort. Effort is priceless. We all grow at different rates, and that's not a bad thing. Knowing that it is possible should be enough to encourage you to start now. And I'm here to show you my journey, my path, and my growth. What'd you think? Did you think I improved? Honestly, I kinda got lazy halfway through this. This took 15 hours and 15 minutes. A lot of improvements, a lot of things that are still lacking, and most of all, a lot of progress. I'm incredibly proud of myself, not only for my progress, but also my resilience and effort. I'm still not at a level where I'm satisfied with my art, since I still struggle with simple stuff like hands and subtle angles. Also, my art style is still developing, and so everything just keeps shifting. This is my first ever YouTube video, and so it might be very scuffed, but I'm learning. Anyways, more content to come. That's it for me. See ya.